During the last 500 years, contact between white civilization and remote tribes has followed two routes, both with disastrous consequences for indigenous peoples. Today, when most tribes are reluctant about contact with outsiders, explorer Sebastian Tirtirau travels around the world, asking them what kind of future they want to build. Sebastian and his team meet in Port Vila, the capital of Vanuatu. They're preparing to visit Sebastian's friends in the South Pacific Islands, the Nafe tribes in the island of Tanna. Vanuatu is an 82-island archipelago located around 1,000 miles east of the Australian coast. From the capital, Port Vila, we have a 1-hour flight to Lenakau, Tanna Island's most important city. Here we'll hire a car and cross the island to reach Port Resolution, where we will meet the Nafe tribes. When Western civilization first encountered Vanuatu, it turned out to be a fearsome place due to the extreme violence of the intertribal wars and their habit of eating their enemies. In the mid-19th century, Christian missionaries arrived in Vanuatu. Many of them ended up being killed and eaten. The local tribes slowly started to renounce their cannibalistic habits, and today, 150 years later, one of the world's most violent places has become one of the most peaceful spots on Earth. In fact, in 2006, the New Economics Foundation declared Vanuatu the happiest place on the planet.
Vanuatu is the only place that I found, of all the tribes I've worked with, that really discovered the way to survive in 21st century with tourism and industry and so forth, and make enough survival and to be able to have a good life than any other tribe I've seen in the world. And they discovered a way that I called before the third way. Not leaving them alone like animals and in the bush and the way they were 500 years ago, not destroying entirely their culture and bringing civilization and destroying them completely, so they're lost to who they are, to their identity, but they combine the two in a beautiful way. And this is exactly what I've been trying to find and exemplify in all my other work with other tribes. In 2007, my brother left San Diego, California, on his 33-foot sailboat to reach Vanuatu. After sailing 6 months, I joined him in Fiji, and then we sailed together from Fiji to Vanuatu. We had no idea what to expect. We read that they are the happiest people in the world, that they live very, very good lives, but we didn't know exactly what to expect.
So, Sebastian's first day at sea. Sebastian, why don't you tell us how you feel?
Well, here we are in our first day. A little wheezy.
After 5 days from Fiji, when I saw Tanna, there was a feeling that is very hard to describe in words. I smelled the fire of the people in the village. I saw coconuts floating around the boat. So this is something that really shocks the sailor after several days at sea or several weeks at sea to smell the land, and it's an amazing feeling.
The flights that connect Port Vila with all the other islands on the archipelago last for approximately 1 hour. Weri was the first person that Sebastian met here. A friendship has developed over the course of 4 years, and every time Sebastian comes to Vanuatu, he visits Port Resolution.
How are you, my brother? 2 years, man. 2 years, man,
Tanna is one of the most popular islands for people visiting Vanuatu. Many of the tribes have realized they can make good money if they attract tourists. And the best way to do this is by putting on a great show.
Guys. Your name?
Lin.
Lin.
What?
Aline is tied down by the members of the tribe and taken into the forest where he'll supposedly be eaten. Once upon a time, such a situation would have meant certain death, but fortunately nowadays, it all ends with a song performed by the fake cannibals.
Hello, hello, welcome tourists to our island. It's so good to see you here today and receive you as our guests from other countries. The song says, Volcano is your memories.
Other tribes on the island have kept their traditions alive in order to attract tourists. This tribe, known on the island as the Naked Tribe, welcomes visitors with traditional songs and dances. Between the two world wars, the island saw the emergence of a religious group called John Frum. Believers claim Jesus himself came to them at some point in the 1930s and issued clear instructions which they're supposed to follow until his second coming. But skeptics believe the locals were drawn in by an American man named John who visited the island on his boat and promised them he'd return with gifts if they'd follow him. For this reason, the movement was labelled a cargo cult. The followers gather every Friday evening and, after ingesting a hallucinogenic drink, spend all night singing until morning. The Yasura Volcano, located nearby, is a sacred area for the John Frum cargo cult. It's also the most popular spot on the island.
Everything is dependent on this Yasura volcano that we have here. It's the only accessible crater, live volcano in the world, where you can go on the rim and see how it blows up. And Yasur means salvation or the savior. In their belief, in the local belief here, people when they die, their spirits go into the volcano and they form this great energy that is out there. to everybody. Do you recognize me? Yes. Okay. I was hoping you don't, so I come as a tourist to see how you say it, what you say.
Port Resolution is located several kilometers from the volcano, though it still plays an important role in village life. The hot lava warms the thermal springs that surface here. Women usually gather in this area in order to wash their clothes using the hot volcanic water, while the children spend their time playing.
Captain Cook came here first time, and he named this harbor, this port, Port Resolution, because one of his ships was named Resolution. And it stayed with the name all the way till today, and the locals are very proud of this name because Captain Cook was the first white man who ever made landfall here on his ships after he discovered New Zealand.
Upon his arrival, Captain Cook encountered several dozen Aboriginals who were very hostile towards him at first. Nowadays, several hundred extremely welcoming locals, the descendants of those who first met Captain Cook, are living in Port Resolution. The Nafe tribes still live in traditional huts, clustered into families, although they first made contact with the outside world more than 200 years ago. Back then, they used to be nomads, moving around the island in search of food, but today they're settled farmers, like most tribes around the world. The most common activity on the island is fishing. Sebastian is getting ready to go snorkeling among the coral to do a spot of spear fishing. The coral reefs attract many species of fish, and if you're a good shot, you can catch enough for an entire meal in less than half an hour. Unfortunately, the fish turn out to be a bit too fast for Sebastian. Not too far away, a group of children appear to be having rather more luck. It's a difficult task, and they practice from childhood onwards. Every day, the children go out to sea and snorkel among the coral, learning to fish and to avoid the dangers. The training grounds extend from the shore to the coral reef. When they grow up, they'll be able to venture out past the reef where other dangers lurk. The men are getting ready to go fishing. Because they head out into the deeper waters of the ocean beyond the coral reef, they go in large groups of 10 to 15 people. In critical situations like drowning or shark attacks, there's greater safety in numbers. Before they get to the fishing spot, Weri casts a trailing fishing line and catches a large barracuda. They manage to reach the right spot. Nobody goes alone. They always go off in 2s or 3s. If they're not careful, the waves can easily crush them against the rocks. In these waters, it's difficult to swim for too long, so only the most experienced divers head out here. They follow the fish, sometimes to a depth of 10 meters, and try to spear them. On their way back, another fish takes the bait, this time a trevally. After 2 hours of fishing, the boat is back with a good catch. All of the fish is shared among the fishermen based on the size of their family. Wary takes the barracuda to serve to the tourists at the community yacht club. In Tanna, the concept of tribal community works perfectly. Everything is shared, including work and its benefits. A big community feast is set to take place the following day. The men go into the fields to catch a cow.
This is the cow. This one, the red one. That's my cow.
This herd lives in a fenced area, but since no one takes care of it, the animals have become wild over time and are difficult to catch. The men surround the herd and chase the cows towards a bottleneck area of the garden. The animals are trapped there, and then comes the difficult part, catching the right one. Montik prepares a lasso attached to a long pole. Whenever the lasso is placed on the cow's neck, the other men have to jump in to help Montik out, otherwise he could end up in trouble.
It's a wild castle.
Watch out.
The food is prepared in the same community fashion. It's a special occasion for the village. After a few years of work, they've managed to build their own church. Although there are several religions in the village, both Christian and non-Christian, there's admirable tolerance between them, so everyone's been invited and is welcome to the feast. After the festivities are over, everyone receives a good meal and enjoys spending time together.
I would say, which is today, some of us, have a little bit of knowledge about what's going on here. And now we kind of like emphasizing that it's really very important to keep this system and to preserve what we have, because we believe that the land or the resources we have, once you missed it, you won't get it back. So.
Community events are frequent in Port Resolution. Today, David is getting married and the entire village is preparing for the festivity. First thing early in the morning, the families of the bride and the groom bring offerings of food to the village centre, which they will exchange with each other. The food, taro and cassava in particular, is stacked up and covered with a floral print cloth. The families also offer one another baskets and rugs woven out of palm leaves. According to tradition, the bride's family must offer a larger pile of gifts, while the groom's family can offer less. A pig and a billy goat will also be slaughtered in honour of today's event. The bride sits aside, while the newlyweds' parents make a brief speech before the villagers. The families take the food and the other gifts and leave for their homes. The newlyweds and the bride's family gather in one place, while the groom's family gathers in another. The bride notes down all the presents, as everything will be equally divided among all the members of the extended family once the event is over. Each family member plays a specific part in the preparations. Today they're preparing lap-lap, a traditional dish in Vanuatu. As there are many guests, everything is prepared in industrial quantities. The women peel the taro and cassava, a filling variety of root similar to yam, which they then grate in order to obtain a smooth paste. The pig and the goat are cut into pieces and covered with leaves to keep the insects off. Some of the men grate coconut flesh to make coconut milk, essential to any traditional Vanuatu dish. Others are involved in starting the fire. They prepare a large pile of firewood, on top of which they place volcanic rocks. Nelson lights the fire, which will then heat up the rocks over the following 2 hours. Meanwhile, large banana tree leaves are laid down on the ground and wetted with coconut milk. These are then topped with the grated roots, which are spread out by hand until it takes the shape of a pie and then sprinkled with blood. The better pieces of pork and goat meat are cut into smaller chunks and scattered all over the pies. The meat is topped with a thick layer of grated root, which is then covered with banana leaves. Since the pies are very big, they have to use strips of wood for tying the pies together so that the filling doesn't spill out while they're carried. Once the fire has entirely burned down, the rocks are pulled out with long, hook-shaped rods. From this point onwards, the operation is very delicate as the oven is extremely hot. The wood is removed in order to stop the fire, and the lap-lap is placed on the hot bed of rocks. Then it's covered with leaves, the remaining whole roots, and the pieces of meat. The entire thing is covered with stones and yet another layer of leaves, and in the end, with soil. This helps keep the heat inside, ensuring the food gets cooked. A few hours later, the soil and leaves are removed. The food is taken out from between the rocks and spread out on the ground, so that everyone can help themselves. The concept of community life functions perfectly here. Everyone takes part in the day-to-day responsibilities and reaps the benefits. They've cooked far more food than they can eat at a single sitting. The leftovers are judiciously divided into piles and then distributed depending on the size of each family.
The most impressive thing about this tribe, the Nafe tribe here, is that they were considered in 2006 the happiest people on the planet. We want to continue to keep this place the way it is. We want to support the village in their needs while not interfering with the beautiful nature around and with the environment. The purpose of our presence here as Pilgrim Society is to improve the lives of people as aspects from malaria, disease control, hygiene and so forth, but without interfering with their natural state of life here in Port Resolution, Tana. We're distributing mosquito nets to 3 villages this morning, and we have about 400 some mosquito nets for these villages. A lot of children need this because 90,000 children every year are affected by malaria in Vanuatu. $15, huh?
Yeah.
They have 6 big and 9 small.
Yeah, thank you.
Especially for the children. Lolly. You didn't get a lolly. You can replace the entire, maybe we can buy you mattresses for the whole bungalows. New mattresses. Yeah, sure. See, so when you finish, you're going to be like a hotel. Okay?
Since the 2007 expedition when they first met, Sebastian has been supporting Weri's project. He sent over various things that they needed to set up the yacht club, which is now well equipped enough to meet the demands of Western tourists. 1 year later, Sebastian met 2 Australians in Tana, Nusha and John. Nusha is a nurse who saw the work Sebastian was doing in Tana and decided to help out. Ever since, they've been collecting money to buy medication. They spend their entire holidays in Tana, treating the inhabitants of Port Resolution and the nearby villages. Today, she's on her way to a French language school a few kilometers away from Port Resolution, where they're waiting for her to come and treat the children. Even though they're scared of what's about to happen, all the children are sitting patiently in their seats, very well behaved, awaiting their turn. The main health problem is the small injuries suffered at work or on walks through the thick forest. Small wounds are attacked by a tiny fly, which at first seem harmless. However, it eats through the scab and lays its eggs inside, causing an infection. If bigger wounds are left untreated, these can be fatal. Even a mosquito bite can turn into a large, pus-filled wound. This man was stung by a mosquito, scratched the itch, and only a few days later, the fly's larva had eaten a hole in his leg.
So you want to pull it out?
I want to pull it out and put something in there.
Oh, how about we do it this way?
Oh, the string to pull it out.
Okay.
Fortunately, these people have a strong immune system and react well to medicine.
One this morning, lunchtime and night.
With a little bit of help, a wound that might otherwise have caused serious problems for over a month can heal in just a few days.
Can I have some?
He go to the fire. He go to the fire.
During his first visit, Sebastian noticed the young people's football skills in Port Resolution. They hoped to take part in the Vanuatu National Football Championship, but lacked the correct kit to enter.
Football is a sport, is a main sport in this part of area that is very useful to the young boys here. So we are trying our best to stop the boys, not to consume a lot of alcohols and kava, so that we can train them, these young boys, to have better skills to play, so that we can represent our club in the league.
In 2009, Sebastian raised funds and sent over 2 sets of kit for each member of the team, one for practice and one for competitions. Ever since, the youngsters have been training for 3 hours every day. The results have been encouraging.
Every year we export players to Port Vila, in the main town, every year. The young people in the village have no job, have no money, so they give all the time in playing. And some of these players have moved to Vila and playing in big clubs in Vila. In the past years, we had a lot of experience in playing in the league. One of our big achievements, we won the last year's tournament. We won 200,000 Fadu cash. The world is changing. The time, things are coming, are rolling in, coming in, like every day. And I would say people have to be very careful, to think about, to think about the past, to think about the present, and to think about the future. We have to be very careful. Even people who are going out there studying, but we have to encourage them not to be very careful with what we have here, so that we don't break these links among our community. And
whenever there's an issue which concerns the fate of the village council, called the Nakamal, gathers in the evening before sunset. There's a special guest in the Nakamal today, a politician from the capital of Port Vila, who explains his political platform to the tribe. During the speeches, most men prepare a hallucinogenic drink from the root of the kava plant. Only men are allowed to drink it. As a matter of fact, the women of the village aren't even allowed to witness the preparation of the drink and are forbidden from approaching the area where the Nakamal gathers. First of all, the men chew the root until it becomes a paste. This is placed in water so that it releases hallucinogenic juices, and then it's wrung out into a piece of cloth and filtered for drinking. First, however, they listen to the speeches with a clear head, and only afterwards do they drink the kava. As the interim village leader, Weri presents the news of the economic system that they use in Port Resolution and its benefits. A few years back, Weri proposed a daring system which, after a little hesitation, the council accepted it and implemented.
When I thought about it, I think it's a very good system because, like, during our time of our ancestors, you know, when we don't have things coming outside our community, especially things from the Western, you know, coming into the community, we talk one language. Like, the community was very, very strong. But when we start having influences from the outside, and then people started to, you know, break all these links. So when I think about it, I thought it's a good idea, you know, for us to keep preserving this system of our community while adopting some idea from the outside world. We still keep our community, you know, together.
After the council accepted Weri's proposal, all private business became community property. Weri was the first to cede his rights over the yacht club. Now he just manages the place and gets paid for his work.
Next week, Tuesday.
The yacht club employs a few tribeswomen who take care of the place and the tourists. They take month-long turns, and women with children get priority. One of them is Nani. With some of the money she earns, Nani can pay for Jacobeth's education. In Tana, schooling is partly subsidized by the government, while the remainder of the fee is covered by the children's parents. The school manages to pay a few of the women to cook for the children on a daily basis. Every evening, children gather in the schoolyard in order to get a hot meal. Port Resolution receives many visitors, which is why the Nakamal has decided to open a public fruit market where the villagers can sell their produce. Each farmer receives a number that the traders place on the farmer's goods. When tourists buy something, the amounts received are written down, together with the farmer's number, so that the money goes to the right person.
Every month we would invite the other tribes to come and work, and at the end of the month we give them a little bit of money, and then we rotate them around. Rotate the work or the job we have here. We rotate it among the tribe in our community, and I would say in that way, people feel like they have they contributing on doing something, and at the end of the month they get a share.
Leah, the restaurant manager, is preparing a big lunch for a group of French tourists. She's assisted by 2 other women, also employed on a monthly basis. The food she serves has been purchased from various villages, not always the same ones. Tourists come in advance and make reservations. After Leah has received all the orders, she prepares a variety of dishes which she serves as an open buffet. There are several businesses in Port Resolution: a yacht club, a bungalow resort, a local market, and 2 restaurants. All of them obtain revenue from tourism. The revenue is split in 2. One part is reinvested towards covering the business's operational costs, while the rest goes into the community chest. Each place employs people from the tribe on a rotating basis, with each person working for 1 month. The community chest can only be used in emergency situations like natural disasters or for the purpose of investing in new businesses.
The great thing that I liked about their mentality, their judgment, is that when they were approached by the big hotels and the big resorts, they said to them, I would rather make less money and be free in my own land and in my own country, rather than working for a Western resort for little money, maybe less than what I'm making now, and clean up after you.
The Council of Chiefs have already come up 2006 with a resolution that we will not allow investors to come in yet. We have to build ourselves up and create our own style of governing, and then we let the people come in from outside. Some people in the past, especially the old people, they got into trap by signing up some contract which, they don't even know what's really behind the scenery,
It is the only place that I found around the world in which a tribe took charge of their own destiny, remain cultural, but yet are exposed to the world and say, you can come see us. You're going to see our dances, our singing, and so forth. You're going to sleep in our place. We're going to give you food. And everything is simpler than in Hilton and other resorts, but it's ours, and the money stays here.
Because, like other places, the economy is in the hands of the foreigners, and the locals have nothing. They have the land, but they have nothing in terms of economy. They could use some other system, but I feel like the system we use is a very strong relationship, and it gives everybody working together, and everything is, just perfectly going on smoothly within our community.
So for me, this is the ideal I've been looking for the past 15 years. If the Bushmen of the Kalahari, the Pygmies of Congo, the Arctic Inuit and the South American Amazonian people would be able to take charge of their destiny like this, they will be preserved forever. Nobody would say that tribe is extinct because we went too deep into them and we destroyed them. But you see, the situation here is completely different than any other parts of the world. The government here allows the local people to manage their land. The government cannot come to Tana and tell them, we're going to build a hotel for you, unless the local chief and the local Narkamal, the local council of people, decides we want to do that.
Prior to departure, Sebastian talks to Weri in order to understand if and how his help might be needed. Life in Port Resolution is beautiful and sustainable, and Sebastian wants to interfere with this system as little as possible. He'd rather learn more about this way of life, as it can help him in his work with other tribes. The following morning, Sebastian and the team are getting ready to leave. Weri and his wife Monique have grown attached to Sebastian, and their goodbyes are increasingly difficult. If all goes well, they'll see each other again in 1 year at the most. In the next episode, Sebastian visits his other friends in the Vanuatu archipelago, the Kiai tribes on the island of Espiritu Santo.